I'm building Sumorbit, a physics-based fighting game where planets sumo wrestle to be the last one standing in the solar system. But there's a problem. The game's branding hadn't been updated since the prototype. I have to make a new logo and banners before releasing the Steam page on Earth Day 2023. I'll also be implementing a main menu, tutorials, updated visuals, and player AI. I had ideas to do a new logo for a while, along with potentially changing the name of the game. But every good name I could think of was already tied to an existing game. Sumorbit had the advantage of being unique, and the idea for the new logo set the name in stone for me. I like that the O is still split in half, but this time it actually looks like a single O. Some of the other name ideas now appear as match start and win phrases. I figured it was finally time to add a main menu. I kept the same menu mechanics from the lobby, where the options appear in a radial menu and can be selected with the right trigger button. I added audio and visual settings that all games need to have, but I had some interesting ideas for ways to view and input options. Volume adjustment is shown as a radial slider that gets thicker at higher volumes. FPS shows a little animation in the frame rate that it represents. Resolution options are shown as scaled rectangles, though it's not perfect since you have to hover to find the one you want. There's also an information picker that shows social media links and game credits. I was finding that there were too many steps to quickly start playing the game, so I added some quick start presets for 1v1, 2v2, practice, and 4-player free-for-all. This preloads the settings ready for players to simply start the match if they don't want to change anything. Space is now a deep blue rather than black. I did this for a few reasons. I noticed a lot of media I used for reference would often have blue space. It adds a bit more vibrance, and the colour is complementary to the orange radiation outside the ring. It also made black be distinct to black holes, which I plan to implement. This is also around the time that I started getting compliments on the visuals. Not to say turning space blue was the reason, just a culmination of all the effects I'd added over time. Along with changing the colour of space, I made stars and comets larger, and added some flowing atmosphere. I added glow around planets and the inside edge of the ring. The screen now also fades to blue between scene changes. I made short tutorials for each player mechanic. The first one has an opponent that won't fight back, aiming to teach moving around and grabbing opponents in a safe space. Bounce is disabled so that players are forced to learn how to grab. Each tutorial requires 3 wins to complete, while allowing for 2 missed attempts. This is to make sure players can perform actions a few times in a row without winning by fluke. The next tutorial is for bouncing. The player is locked in place until grabbed. You get thrown, and the only intended way to survive is to time a bounce off of the ring. On a successful bounce, your opponent will simply drift off into deep space. I had to think of some creative ways to end tutorials from always having the opponent player die, since I didn't want to implement another win condition. Tutorial number 3 uses bounce as an offensive tool, launching your opponent. The AI is programmed to parry when a player tries to grab them, but grab is still enabled to allow for grabbing space to get speed. The 4th tutorial shows how you can grab space to prevent massive knockback from bounces. The player is locked in place until bounced, and the opponent continues on a straight path to doom. Tutorial number 5 forces them to parry to survive. If they don't time the parry, they'll have their health fully drained from the grab. A successful attempt will have the opponent die to the rapidly shrinking ring. The 6th tutorial locks the player in place. They can't bounce or grab themselves, so they're forced to get grabbed and have to spin to escape. They'll also have to change spin directions intermittently to the same direction as the opponent that's grabbing them. The 7th and final tutorial has the player grab the opponent and spin in the opposite direction to them to prevent them from breaking out. Their grab doesn't regenerate, so if they don't kill their opponent in one grab, they die to the shrinking ring. The spin tutorials are a little chaotic and don't teach as effectively as I'd like, but at least they exist. These tutorials use the custom AI system from the last devlog, where I can define a restricted list of actions that they're allowed to perform. But this didn't allow for different difficulty settings. I decided to implement values from 0 to 1 for different traits the AI can have. Precision defines how likely it is for the AI to perform optimally. For example, how often it would successfully bounce the ring when touching it, or grab when their moon is over a player. This allowed for some easy, medium, and hard AI presets. Adaptiveness will gauge how precise the human opponent is and try to match that level of precision itself. It uses the same system to determine precision as it does when deciding whether to show button prompts. The idea is to have close matches as the default, for players of all skill levels to enjoy the game. Though it can be hard to judge improvement this way, which is why the difficulty presets have 0 adaptiveness. The final trait is aggressiveness, which determines how likely it is for the AI to approach the player versus running away. This allowed for some defensive and aggressive presets to practice against specific playstyles. The AI also has access to new actions like grabbing space. It can use this to quickly get back inside the ring after being launched, or orbit around its moon to build speed for bounces. It can also grab the sun for extra health when it's close. There was a bug with the new AI, where the planet would continue to move while dead. I decided to turn this bug into a feature for human players. I thought this could be an interesting mechanic for multiplayer battles, to keep dead players engaged. Though the only action they can do is move, their planet stays constantly bouncing, so you can bump into other players. There are so many options and assets needed for Steam, so I did it in small increments over time. I needed some promotional art for banners. AI image generation was the new hot thing at the time, so I decided to give it a go, and used Midjourney, which gave me some decent results after a few iterations. I did some cleanup in Photoshop to make it look a bit more like the moon is coming from the other planet, and I was decently happy with the final result. I then had to make a dozen different banner sizes for all the different places that Steam puts them. After 2 years of weekly playtests at Friday Night Smash, we couldn't continue to run the event at the same venue anymore. I figured the game had run its course at FNS anyway. Most of the brackets towards the end were small, with new players having to play against the game's developer and the best player in the world. It was a great opportunity for around 85 playtests, and helped a lot with fine-tuning balancing. I also decided that I'd run my course with tournament organising and live streaming after 8 years. I used the final FNS before I left as a way to get footage for a new trailer, since a lot of the older footage had black-coloured space, which dated the visuals. I got my friend Oscar to make custom music for the trailer, and released it along with a Steam page on Earth Day 2023 for people to add to their wish lists, which you should totally do, by the way. Walking away from FNS felt like the end of a chapter for me, but it wasn't the last chapter for Simorbit. In the next devlog, I'll be adding new maps with hazards, as well as custom character presets and finding new places to playtest the game.